having the right people in the right place with the right tools. So thank you very much on the economic development side. Now it's my honor to introduce our Congressman. Tom Graves serves in the 14th Congressional District, and that district spans from in the north part of Georgia, from Alabama all the way to the Tennessee line. Tom entered Congress in 2010, and he got elected in the 9th District to a special deal. I think you told me you ran 3 or 4 times within a couple of months time span. I tell you, that's expensive. But by doing that, when the other elections happened in 2012, it catapulted him way ahead of folks. What does that mean to us? That means we got a congressman that's on appropriations. What does appropriations do? Appropriations is about budgeting, it's about spending, it's about controlling cost, and he is a staunch Republican, and being on the Appropriations Committee, it entitles him to also serve on several subcommittees in appropriations on commerce, justice and science, financial service, and interior and environment. Prior to being elected, he served in Georgia in the General Assembly for 7 years, and while there, he was advocate for small business, putting Georgians back to work through a series of tax credits, cuts, and incentives for small business. In 2009, the Legislative Exchange Council, ALEC, voted him the American Legislative Council named him the entrepreneur. Make sure you don't get that mixed up with manure. It's entrepreneurial legislator of the year. I only do this to him because he's such a pretty boy, you know. Tom grew up in White, Georgia. He later attended the University of Georgia, go Dogs, with a BBA in finance. Now, you don't want a better person in your Congress than somebody with a finance degree. So, again, thank you very much. He has a beautiful wife, Julie. He has 3 children, and they all live in Ranger. But now when you see them coming, they all get out in politics. They're all right along with their daddy, and they're an impressive bunch of folks. He believes in America. He believes in Georgia. He believes in Paulding County. And I can tell you, he spent a year with us before he ever took office, understanding our problems with 3rd Army and Highway 92, our Richland Creek Reservoir. He knows what we're doing. He is a good friend to Paulding County, and I'd like to introduce our Congressman, Tom Graves. So poker chips, toothbrushes. Pastor, you want your chip back? You did? Okay. Oh, it's a joy to be with you today. Can you just feel the enthusiasm and the excitement in here? I mean, it's nice. And Chairman, let me thank you. I tell you, he's a very wise politician. He knows that if he were to get up and roast, that I have the mic last. And so he was very, very soft in his approach of roasting me, because he's been worse, I can tell you. He's been a great leader for y'all here in the community, and I think you know that. And the announcements of the economic development here, I mean, that's exciting to hear about. Things are starting to move a little bit. We're seeing and hearing that all across the 14th Congressional District. And your attendance here today is just a reinforcement of who we are as Americans, and here in our district, that we get up every day, we go to work, and we work hard. A lot of speakers would come into a room like this and say, man, keynote speaker, all these people show up, it must be for me. I know different. I think it's Atlanta's finest catering that's provided all this here. Lori's done an amazing job. I know she's not with us, but that was awesome. I'm smiling a little bit better today because we heard yesterday that there were 2,400 jobs coming to the 14th Congressional District in Northwest Georgia. Isn't that awesome? Good news. And I know that's what you're about. That's what we're all here about, is working hard, as the pastor said. I mean, it's what we've been called to do, to be a productive nation and to work hard, get up every day to do that and to provide for our families.
And it's been tough over the last couple of years, and y'all have been a great example of not giving up and to continue to do that. But today I want to talk a little bit about what's going on in Washington, try to sum this mess up as best I can. The topics have been all over the board in the last several weeks. And first on our mind oftentimes is what occurred in Boston. I mean, that was a terrible, terrible attack on really on our way of life. And investigators are still working to get to the bottom of it. And we're trying to understand it. It's hard to understand when somebody attacks as they did and hurts so many innocent folks. But I have to say I was impressed with the way the community in Boston came together to take care of those that were hurt and reacted swiftly to bring to account and soon justice of those who committed these crimes. Now, some in Washington dove right into the politics of this, and it's very dangerous to do that because there's a lot still left to be learned from what occurred in Boston. And I think it's important to allow the investigators to investigate and let the prosecutors do their prosecuting, and they'll get the job done. But make no mistake, there is oversight from Congress that will take place in this. We will get to the bottom of this. We will find out what happened and why, and we will hold folks accountable. But the justice in the aftermath, we have to be careful with here. We've got to provide swift justice and appropriate justice, and bring them to justice so that America feels very protected. But at the same time, you have civil liberties and such that we've got to make sure Washington doesn't overreach and go too far and impact law-abiding citizens, law-abiding Americans as well. So then you have budget sequestration. You heard a little bit about that recently, right? Everybody's heard of sequestration now. I would imagine that 20 months ago, no one had really heard of that word. It's somewhat of a Washington word, I think made up to be a sort of a scary-sounding word, but you know what it means? Something's going to get done whether Washington does their job or not. That's all it meant. It's a backstop. Cuts were put in place that were going to take effect mandatorily if Washington didn't come up with a way to reduce spending in Washington. So for the first time, and since George Bush, I guess our spending level on the discretionary side in Washington is at a level not seen since George Bush was president because of sequestration that took place. So we heard about this with the Federal Aviation Administration. And they immediately went to the political side of this. Now, you have to take this into full context because it was in August of 2011 when sequestration became law, when the president signed it into law, and when every agency knew that it was law, and yet just days and weeks ahead of various impacts, all of a sudden politics becomes part of the scene as usual, and furloughs begin to take place. And it wasn't long before the Democrats were stopped pushing for tax increases to replace cuts, and instead now furloughs haven't taken place on the Federal Aviation Administration, and flights are not delayed at this point. But I think we all know when you fly, there's a delay every now and then, right? I mean, you said there's weather delays, there's all kinds of delays, but this was a different type of delay. Now I'm here with some leaders from the state, and many of them I served with, great friends in the House and the Senate. And I think y'all know this. I mean, Georgia went through furloughs. Teachers went through furloughs. State employees went through furloughs. And we made it okay. It wasn't easy. And I will say that there will likely be federal employees furloughed. But what does that mean? It means somebody doesn't get paid for not going to work, but it also means they keep their job. And that's something that we have to remember through all of this. And the question is it more important to preserve our nation and promote prosperity for the future, or is it more important to promote additional government today? Now, I will side on the fact that, look, let's promote a future, an economic future that is very positive and very robust, and let's make the sacrifices we need to make today. So we will continue to hear about sequestration over the next several weeks as it begins to be implemented, but I hope that the leadership that we've experienced here in the state of Georgia will be an example for what Washington can do and what federal employees can do and what the federal government can do, because we have to do it. It's that important. Then the last topic is Obamacare. Heard a little bit about that in the last couple of years. And what's occurring right now in Washington is what you heard from one of the Senate Democrat leaders saying that this was going to be a train wreck. Now, I could have told him that a few months ago before he realized that. But it is going to be a train wreck, and there's efforts in Washington to delay. There's efforts such as mine to defund and do away with. And I want you to know that regardless, and many would say, well, the president won the election, the Supreme Court made their decision last year, that you would feel that there is no chance that it can be relieved, removed, or uprooted. But there still is that chance. We're still working hard because it is what is right for America is not this program. The fact that 20+ new taxes have been put in place is not right for America. The largest taking of an industry in our country has taken place, and that is not right for America. So we will continue pushing and pushing and pushing to do what's right for America. And that means that it's still going to be an issue over the next 6-7 months before full implementation takes place to do the right things. And in my opinion, that would be defund it, uproot it, repeal it in its entirety, and allow private sector solutions to take place instead of government solutions. So in light of all of this, sometimes it seems tough. Yeah, we've been through some tough weeks. But I want to just remind us why we do what we do. And some of you have heard this story I'm about to share because it's impacted me so much. We get up every day and we go through a day, and certainly I would hope that we do it because it's what we've been called to do, whatever it is through that day. And some days are easy, some days are tough. And a few weeks ago, I guess it was now maybe 4.5 weeks ago, I was speaking to a 4th grade class of students. Now, I don't know if you've had that chance to do that. So these are 10 and 11-year-olds. And I have about 4 classes all combined into one, and they're all sitting on the floor, and I'm sitting in one of those little bitty chairs like you'd have in Sunday school, and I'm trying to connect the federal government to their way of life, right? And it was really difficult to do. And I was going through the bill on Capitol Hill. I was going through everything I could pull out, to explain and connect with them. And then as I'm looking through this classroom, and I'm looking in the eyes of these 10 and 11-year-olds, it just hit me that many of them were likely growing up exactly how I grew up, or maybe even in more difficult circumstances. Because I didn't grow up in wealth or politics. It was very challenging economic times and how I grew up. And I just stopped in the middle of my 10th grade or 10-year-old presentation on federal government and looked at them and said, can I just ask y'all a question? And I said, do you ever dream of what you might ever become? And do you ever just think about one day when I get old, I want to be or I want to do something? And they're all looking around smiling and giggling. I told them my story a little bit. And I told them, I said, because I grew up, when I was your age, I don't think I did. I don't think I knew. I had no idea. Because of how I grew up, I just thought I was just going to grow up. And I guess I would be something. But I didn't know what that something was. I said, but there's so much. We're in the greatest country on the planet. You could do anything that you put your mind to. So do you dream? And about 6 hands went up out of maybe 60 students. And I was like, wow. Surely there's more. And so I said, okay, would one of you just share with me your dream? And I know I'm asking you a personal question. Would you share with me your dream? And this little girl raised her hand and she said, I want to be a nurse. Wow. The second one raised his hand, wanted to be a firefighter. And then there was a Marine. Then there was a software designer, the Game Boy designer. He went through the whole class, and 35 minutes later, hearing every pro athlete that there could be, including the one who wanted to be a professional soccer player. And I stopped and I said, that's awesome. Do you play today? And he said, no, I've never played. And it hit me, that is the American dream. Only in this country can you have never done something and dream to do it. And these kids still embody that American dream. And so it means it's in our DNA. It's who we are. And every one of them shared with me their dream. So 10 and 11-year-olds in our district are in class right now with a dream, with a hope, with an aspiration to be something. And they're innocent and unaware because of what we do every day, whether it's fighting in Washington or in a county commission or going to work. Innocent and unaware that what we're doing today directly impacts their ability to achieve that dream. But they're counting on us each and every day. So it's those fourth graders, when I get up now, and I do what I do, or advocate for a position I advocate for, or I work hard in a campaign, whatever it might be, I think about those little boys and girls, 10 and 11-year-olds, who one day will accomplish those dreams. And I know that because if a guy like me can grow up how I grew up and be a United States congressman, those kids can achieve anything. So I want to thank you for what you're doing, because it's those 10 and 11-year-olds that are in school today that are counting on you to keep doing what you're doing so they can achieve their dreams. So God bless you. Thanks for letting me represent you. It's an honor to do it. Thanks for letting me join you today. Thank you, host. Thank you.
Congressman is agreed. We have time for a few questions, so I'll turn it back over.
Questions, right? Easy ones. Remember, I'm used to the 10 and 11-year-olds questions here. Now, I will add, while you think of your questions, not one of them said they want to be an elected official. So our jobs are safe, right? Is that it? No questions.
We're deepening in the Port of Savannah, how the federal government played a role in that or didn't play a role.
That is an extremely important project for not just the state, but really for our country, for the eastern seaboard here. I've been very supportive of that, as well as our entire delegation. Things are moving forward. It looks like there's been some agreement by the state of South Carolina to allow things to move forward a little bit more. There's some lawsuits that have been in place, and I think there's some agreements there. But it is in large support of, obviously we have to be supportive of that, and it's been programmed for a long time. A very complicated issue, because when it was programmed and dollars were set aside and the project was estimated, that was years ago. And as you know, as a community leader, costs go up over time. And as lawsuits ensue and other things happen and other costs are required, the cost has gone outside of what was originally authorized. So now it's a matter of realigning that authorization with the actual cost. But I have to commend the General Assembly members who are here, who have been setting aside money, along with Governor Deal and Governor Perdue ahead of him, to begin preparing for that. And that's been very helpful. And I would say there's almost, $300 million? Is that, do y'all recall the number that's set aside? So that's a true partnership that's important for the whole state of Georgia.
Anyone else?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you talk about immigration laws or reform on that?
Yeah, that's that's going to be very challenging. I think we have an opportunity. There's a window within the next 4, 5, 6 months to accomplish something. To the specifics, it's hard to say right now because the Senate has their group of 8 that's been meeting, and they have proposed an 800-page bill. I guess that'll go through their process. And so from the House side, we need to wait and see what is produced from the Senate, what actually passes the Senate before we should really make any comments. And I would caution anyone from making too many judgments until it makes it through the process, whatever that is. But this is an issue that truly needs to be resolved, and there's basically 3 silos that have to be addressed, and that's border security, and that's a workable program, and then dealing with those who are already within our borders. So those are 3 silos. 2 of them are a little easier to deal with than the other. So, but I think there's an opportunity. That's it.
Congressman Graves, thank you for being here.
Yes.
Dave Carmichael, retired military. Been very disturbed about Benghazi. Would you comment on that? If we'll get to the bottom of it next week.
I would say a lot of people are very disturbed about what happened in Benghazi. And I'm not on a committee that's had any oversight hearings. So what I've seen and heard has generally been probably some of the avenues or the channels you've seen or heard, with the exception of a few confidential briefings we've had. This is a very serious, really problem that occurred in Benghazi. And accountability is lacking right now. No one's taking accountability for this. But yet we had Americans killed, and there have been no account as to why or who was responsible or could it have been prevented. I would say that there's many who believe it could have been prevented, and that the devastation that did occur could have been minimized. So this is an issue that I hope does get more light, and there have been, I forget the total number of hearings, but I want to say near 60 plus hearings on this, many public, many confidential hearings, and it's a matter of consolidating all that data from all these hearings and trying to move in one direction. But I've co-sponsored, along with Chairman Wolf, legislation to allow for a special committee on Benghazi, to allow for the appointment that is, it's not a political committee, it is one made up of Republicans and Democrats from various committees who are been doing the oversight hearings on this, to get to the bottom of it, get one answer, not a bunch of different answers out there. We've got to prevent that from happening in the future.
Okay, well, let's thank Congressman Graves for being here. Appreciate it. Have a small token of our appreciation. Thank you once again. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, we have our, let's thank him again.